Can you guys hear me okay? Okay, I'm gonna get started. I'm Jeanette. I'm an alcoholic addict. Um, I also suffer from some chronic mental illnesses, and I want to start with that because it ties into my addiction. In the end, I was born in Green Bay. At a really young age, I was sexually abused by a neighbor, 4 years old till I was six. I had a dad. My parents were married. They loved each other, but my dad didn't want kids, and he expressed that to us a lot. Like he never wanted kids, and he completely kept himself away from me and my sister. Also, my sister, she's been my lifelong bully. She's bullied me since the day that I was born. My family life was a little dysfunctional. Um, and when I turned about eight, I think it was 8 years old, I got sexually molested again by another neighbor. And around that time, I started to feel these feelings being repressed, and I remember being confused and not knowing what to do with the feelings I was having. I started to cut when I was 8 years old. I didn't know how to deal with my emotions, and talking about it, I couldn't. Um, I, growing up too, I had a father figure. It was my Uncle Mark. He came over. He used to sing me to sleep. He was there for me, through most of my childhood. I guess what triggered my bipolar and my PTSD, my Uncle Mark killed himself when I was 12. I saw it. Um, he hung himself outside of his girlfriend's window, and that triggered my bipolar. I started to feel the dark feelings. I started to feel the manic and the mood swings just going out of control. And because I had seen what I saw, I tried to kill myself when I was 12. And I mean, like, suicide for me was always like an option in my head. Like, if I didn't want to deal with something, well, that was an option. And I made at least 11 suicide attempts in my childhood up to like the end of my teenage years. Um, when I was younger too, I got bullied at school. I was different, because I was a little out there, a little crazy. Um, I mean, most of the kids couldn't understand why I stood out so much and why I was like wanting the attention that I was constantly trying to get. I got bullied a lot, so like it felt like it backfired. I felt a lot of rejection at school. And when I would get home, I had my sister who would reject me too, and my father. So it was like I was constantly looking to be accepted, and I was constantly like trying to get the attention that I needed, and I couldn't, I couldn't find that. And like between the cutting and the like even the suicide attempts, going into hospitals, mental hospitals, I've been in and out of mental hospitals at least 30 times during my teenage years because I would try to hurt myself and then I would be able to go to the hospital. For me, that was my escaping. Like, for me, at home wasn't good, school wasn't good, so I would end up doing something irrational and ending up in the hospital, where they taught me how to use pills to treat my symptoms. I was really young, probably like 13 years old. They put me on Valium and told me, here, just take this when you have anxiety. So whenever I felt stressed out, I wasn't being monitored by my parents. I had the meds. And whenever I felt stressed out, I took Valium. And I noticed that all my feelings went away. Like everything was good and I thought everything was great. And then I didn't want that feeling to go away. So I took some more and more. And after about 3 or 4 days straight of just every couple of hours taking Valium, I had overdosed. Um, and then I went back into detox for the first time. Really confused as to why I was in detox because people there were on drugs, and I was like, I was just doing what my doctor had told me to do, and they tried to tell me, hey, that's addict behavior to want to escape those feelings all the time. So after that, there was like a little fight between my parents and some lawyers about possibly suing the doctors for giving a young child that controlled substance. And because my mom dropped in, she didn't want it. She said, "No, we're not gonna take this. We're just gonna switch your doctors, whatever." That was eventually on my record and in my head. Um, the more that I seeked out other ways to escape what was going on in my head besides because I have PTSD, the flashbacks from when I was a kid, the darkness, the depression, all of that. I always wanted to escape it, so I would go and find new ways to do that. I started to drink. Pills were a really long time. Had problems with pills because when I was in mental health centers, they would constantly say, just take a pill and you'll feel better. Take these pills, they'll make you better. And like, I thought that's what you do for everything. Like, if I didn't want to be in a situation, I'd take some pills. Or, like that mentality, the addict mentality came like out in my brain young. And like, everywhere I went, all the support that I had kept saying, you got to take your meds. You got to take your meds. And I do have to take some of my meds, but like I don't even taking controlled substances for me, it was the beginning of my addiction problem. Like I was felt like really alone too. Like during school, like middle school, high school, I got bullied, I got beat up, I got people just call me crazy. They say you belong in a psych ward, nobody likes you, you're insane. And like back then that hurt me because like I knew I was different. Now it's being pointed out. I got into high school. I started getting beat up a lot. The girls would use whatever excuse they could to corner me and beat me up after school. And then when that would happen, I didn't feel safe going home. I'd go to a friend's house, and that's where I started smoking weed. That's when the pill thing was still huge. I was buying pills, and I was starting to manipulate doctors too. Like I was like, well, you guys gave me this at a young age. We could have pressed charges. Blah 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 blah. Being that that addict manipulation going on, I was like, we could have done something about that. And doctors did cave in for that. They gave me what I wanted. I wanted Adderall. I wanted Percocet. I wanted Xanax. I could have whatever I wanted, and I knew that. Like, part of me knew that. And I went out of my way and purposely manipulated my doctors into giving me these controlled substances when really I needed help mentally. Like, my mental health was bad. But because I was so focused on escaping it and getting the pills from the doctors, like, I no longer took care of I just used pills for everything. I just used like whatever I could find. Whatever would make me escape from what was going on up here was my thing. That was what my go-to. And that went on a long time. Like I remember junior year, I got beat up with baseball bats because these girls said that I was looking at them in the locker room. And I wasn't even attending gym class anymore because I got so much shit when I went there. They beat me up with baseball bats, and the hall monitor had to carry me into the office. And they got my parents in the room, and she's like, okay, well, here's what we can do. We can expel Jeanette, or we can send her to a school with kids that have chronic mental health problems. And I chose to go to the school for kids with mental health problems. And this was like a separate school. There's only like 8 kids. Everybody had the same problems that I did. But we got to do our schoolwork, but we also got the help that we needed. Like, I remember them really pushing me because I wrote a poem when I first started school there, and my teacher was like, that was really good. You should really challenge that. You should channel that into your poetry. All those emotions you're feeling, channel it. And I was just like, oh, I'm not that good at it, whatever, but I'll try. And I would try, and the more that I noticed that I was good at it, that became my first healthy outlet for my emotions, was seeing that, I can write it on paper and I can make it beautiful, and that felt good. And then I ended up winning a poetry award that same year for a poem that I wrote, and I won $2,000 for Editor's Choice Award for a really short poem I wrote in like 2 seconds. And when I got home, my sister ripped up my award, and she didn't like the fact that I was getting positive attention. She didn't like the fact that I had got attention at all growing up, but they were constantly focused on me. So my sister was very resentful towards me. I did a lot of things to take away the attention growing up too, though. It wasn't just her, it was me. Like when I get mad at her, I'd be like, oh, if I throw a fit at my parents, they'll pay attention to me. And it was like kind of a little war there. And all I remember is that she ripped that up, and like that was the night that I went out, and I went to a friend's house, and she ended up running away, so I went with her. And I went to one of my first, real parties, and I did ecstasy and acid at the same time. and I had a bad trip, and I had all my friends that were supposed to be there for me. They just left me outside an apartment building, and I didn't even know where I was. But that was like the first time that that walk home, when I finally did figure out where I was. That was the first time that I thought there was a problem. Like, I have a problem. Like, I went out of my way to do this because my sister upset me, and like I noticed the pattern was there. Like, it took a long time for me to come to terms. Like, as soon as I started getting pills, I became a really big pill dealer, like in my 20s. Like, that's all I did was deal pills. And all the attention and the acceptance, too. Like, every time that I was doing drugs, I was accepted by these kids from school. I was accepted by the people I wanted to be accepted by. And that for me was winning because, like, hey, these people are accepting me. Oh, and I don't feel like shit anymore. So those two things are very toxic combination for me. Knowing that doing drugs will take both my problems away. I'll be accepted and no more pain. And it got, pretty bad. I moved into an apartment at like 23 years old. I got hooked on cocaine really bad. Speed just happened to be my thing. Speed's always been my thing. I do enough speed, it shuts off the mania, it shuts off the depression, it just shuts off everything. And like, I feel everything so intensely that like shutting it off was like, that was the goal. Then I would get high. I lost my apartment because I had a cocaine dealer living with me, and I was dealing Adderall, and they caught on to that, and they kicked me out. And that was another time where I thought, this is really, really messed up. Maybe I should stop, but it was just a cycle all the way up till like got pregnant with my son. I was 26 when I got pregnant with my son. I dropped everything, like no pills, no drinking, no nothing. I went into withdrawals. Ashton suffered from withdrawals in my stomach in the hospital. And I got through it. I didn't do anything else. Like, I stayed off it. When he was born, I was in new mom mode. So I was like, hey, for 4 years, I didn't do anything. But like they say, how your addiction is outside doing push-ups. Well, mine was fucking visiting the gym constantly. Like, it was waiting for me. Like, for 4 years, I'm like, I got this. I'm not an addict. Like, I'm a kid. I'm a mom now. I can do this. And like, the day that his dad and I split, it came to get me. Like, I started to drink. I was drinking a lot. There was just a lot of the same thing. Like, my whole life, it's been a constant, like, runaway escape. Be accepted, like, don't feel anything. And after, I guess my biggest, I'm just gonna, like, skip ahead a little bit. When I turned, like, 32 years old, that's when somebody gave me, meth for the first time. And I did it, and, it was okay. But that wasn't what I wanted. I was always, it's not something I wanted to do, but I ended up doing it. I was snorting it, though it wasn't using needles yet. I went through a lot. I slowly, like, stopped having shorter times with my son. I believe he was like 5, I want to say. I had shorter periods of time I could take my kid, and that was my fault. And I got so preoccupied with chasing drugs and getting meth and getting pills too, and like that whole game just took over me. Like, I stopped being a mom. Like, if I had my son for 2 days, it was hell because I couldn't get high, and I couldn't, like, in my head I'm going, this sucks because I'm being mean to my kid because I'm coming off of whatever I was doing the days before he came. And there was a time where I tried to be a good mom. I was still doing the hard drugs. I was kind of jonesing for a few days, and Ashton was in my care. I put him to bed, and somebody came through and said, hey, we got this. You want to come get it? Come get it. And not even thinking, I left my son alone. I got in the car, and I drove out to Shawano to get drugs, not even remembering that my son was asleep in his car, in his bed. I got home, and he had busted up his face. Like, my friend Melanie was there. She came like 20 minutes before I came back, because I flew back like, oh my god, what am I doing? And he had busted up his face. And I had to take him into the hospital, and I remember sitting there going, oh my god, I can't fucking do this anymore. This has to stop. And I was having, so many things going on, my anxiety, and like, I had Ashton's dad just take him for a while so I could just get my shit straight. and I put myself in the hospital. Mostly I went in for my anxiety, but like really I needed a detox, and I needed to detox like right then and there because that was the worst day of my life. And um, I I did okay in Willow Creek. They got me on meds that weren't narcotic. They got me kind of stay. They got me in a place where if I would have stayed on track, I would have done okay. But I got too wrapped up in meeting somebody in the hospital and wanting to hang out with them because I want friends that accept me. So maybe if I hang out with other crazy people, that'd be great. It's not great. I met my abuser there. We started hanging out, and he got me into needles. And like I was going out to Shano and like not even remembering, hey, you have a kid. Maybe you should go home. Like maybe you go spend time with him. But like in my head, I'm like there's like I know that I can't do it. I knew where I was at was just it was not a place for a kid to be involved. So I didn't see him for a couple months. I was going out to Shano all the time, and Mike taught me how to use needles. Now, with the meth stuff, it was always traumatic for me. Every time that I shut up, I got traumatized. I had a guy that would just whirlwind, like around the corner he'd come and he'd just, beat the shit out of me. And that went on for a long time. He got really bad until he ended up with attempted murder charges. But every time I got high, I was elevating myself so high to shut off the shit, and then I was getting scared that like I couldn't stop. I felt like meth was keeping me strong, and it was not keeping me strong. Like it was not doing anything for me, but in my head I was like, this will keep me strong. I don't have to feel anything. I can do this. I can do this. And then I ended up going out to Shano again. Oh, the last time I went out there, I got arrested. I locked my keys in the car, and there were needles all over my dad's car, like used ones. Like I was a sloppy fucking user. Um, I went there. I went out there to go and see Mike, which I wasn't supposed to do, and I did. And I locked my keys in the car. So we went into the Family Dollar, I think it was, and we asked them to use the phone because my phone was inside, and they said yeah, but she also had called the police because we were acting sketchy, like we were high. It was obvious, and I got arrested. I got put in Shano jail on a possession of meth charge. I sat, what was it? I sat 28 days, and I got 2 years probation, and it was for a residue charge. It was just like they gave me residue charge because everything was like empty baggies and stuff. They just charged me for that. There was no actual like hard drugs in there. But sitting in that county jail, I remember like that was the first time that I could think like maybe I need to get the hell away from this guy. Like I need to go home, and I need to get my shit together. And like they put me out on probation, and I was like determined to like be good at being on probation. But um, I got back, I got out, went home, started being on probation. Uh, you know, I I just wasn't ready. Like I kept thinking like, well, I'm away from Mike now, so I'm safe. So and then I started getting high again. I went to my probation officer's appointment high and tried to tell her I wasn't. Um, I had needle marks all over my body. Like there was no fucking I didn't hide it at all. And I ended up going in for a probation hold, I think. And then I got it out like after like 10 days, and they put me back out there. Um, and they had me go to like AODA and stuff. And I was living with my mom. I started sneaking off when I was at my mom's house and pretending like I was sober, but sneaking off and getting high with my friends because they lived in the same building as her. And I remember feeling like hate for my mom. Like I hated for what she did. That she saved my life. She saw that I had needles in my purse. One of them was full of meth, and she took it out of my purse and she kept it in her nightstand until I had my home visit. And she handed it to my PO, and I remember just being so pissed off at her. Like, why would you do that to me? Why would you turn me in? And like, it didn't take me very long. In jail, I was sitting there like I'm revoked now. I only had a couple months to do the revocation, but I was sitting there, and I realized that my mom, she didn't know what to do with me anymore. Like, she couldn't stop me, and like nothing was helping. And she did the last thing that she probably wanted to do, but the one thing that would save my life. And she got me locked up away from the drugs. She needed that because she was so worried about me all the time that she needed to know I was safe. And like, she hoped that while I was spending time in jail, like I would think about it and I would get my shit together. And like, I had moments where like, I wanted to quit, and I was in that mind frame of I'm gonna quit. I just didn't know how. Um, and when I didn't know how to how to get in that whole thing. Like, people in recovery from a distance at that time for me were like, wow, I want what they have, like I want what these people have, and I want to be like that. Like, I want to be clean again. Like, I don't want this anymore. And I had a visit from my son, and after that, I fell apart. I was crying in my jail cell. I was the first time in my life I got down on my knees and I prayed. And I said, God, help me. Like, you have to help me. I'm like, I can't do this to me or him anymore. Like, this has to stop. You have to help me, please, please. I'll do whatever it takes. And then I got a visit from a professional from mental health court. They had done like like the whole like screening thing, and I started to talk about how a lot, like, I didn't exactly qualify for mental health court completely. Like, there's a few things that weren't there that I needed to be there, but they did give me a signature bond. They said, here, this is your chance. This is what you're going to do. And you're going to do all this stuff, and you're going to P-test, and you're going to show up for all your appointments. You're going to go to all this stuff like AODA, you need to go to IOP, you need to be doing this, you need to be in DBT for your borderline, like, you need to be doing all that. And if you can prove to us that you can do it for the month that you're out on bond, we will start you in court. And I did it. I did it, like, no problem. Like, I had the DBT there. I was learning how to deal with my emotions. And then I had the IOP, which was helping me realize, like, what part of my addiction was really bothering me. And on top of that, I started going to HA. The minute that I walked into the room of HA, I was surrounded by people that I was like, wow. Like, these people, like, they're really committed to, like, their recovery. And I was blown away by it. I was like, wow, this is awesome. Like, I didn't know that it was like that. I never had been to a meeting before. But after sitting there and hearing other people, I'm like, I'm not alone. Like, and that feeling for me to not feel alone without using drugs was huge. And the feeling of, doing my DBT and stuff, dealing with my emotions myself, was empowering, and it was helping, and, like, I was getting stable. And I was going to HA meetings, and, like, the people in HA, my God, were like a family. Like, it was like they were so welcoming, and it didn't matter how wacky I was or how goofy I was being. Like, people were accepting of me, and all of this was happening without drugs. Like, I didn't have to get high anymore. Like, I could do these things, and I was so proud of myself, and I was so proud that I finally gave everything up to my higher power and just said, like, every day, I had to pray and meditate every day. I still do. I meditate a lot. Like, even when I just need to calm down, like, the more I know I reach out to my higher power to guide me, I know I'll be okay. Like, I had to meditate before I did this because I was a nervous wreck. But, like, I remember, like, that one time that was enough for me, because growing up, I always thought that God hated me for what happened to me. Like, people, that's the way you think sometimes. Like, growing up, I thought God hated me for all this trauma that I've been through. Like, he didn't love me and this and that. And then when I finally actually prayed and he answered me like that, I was like, I'm never questioning God again. Like, somebody is there. And then the more I was in treatment with all the stuff going on with court, the more I started to see that God didn't hate me, that the things that happened to me as a child could have been worse. It could have gotten worse. Like, there could have been so much worse that could have happened to me, but I was alive, and I was still with my family, and I was still, like, through everything, like, all the dangerous stuff that I was doing, God may not have he didn't put me through it, he saved me. Like, I'm still here, and, like, I really shouldn't be. But if it weren't for God, I wouldn't have been able, like, things could have been a lot worse. He kept me alive, kept me going, kept me, even at my worst, like, I could still pick myself up and be like, all right, let's keep going. Let's keep doing this. And that alone for me, like, all of that, all the good stuff that was happening, and I didn't have to get high to do it. Like, once I finally started realizing, wow, I can do this. Wow, as long as I'm praying to that higher power and I keep in contact with him, like, I don't feel that urge to use. Like, for me, it wasn't there. Like, I was way more interested in what was going on with recovery. Like, I was way more interested in, like, continuing to better myself. And then it came up, from the time I got out up until this last November, I had 9 months. I had 9 months clean. I was so proud of myself. And I ended up relapsing on pills. in November I had to face my abuser in court for my restraining order, and I didn't keep after that. I stopped keeping contact with God. I wasn't resorting to my support, my therapist. I wasn't opening up and saying this is bothering me. I kept it inside me, and then they gave me gabapentin back, and I started to abuse that. I was living at Sandy Fabry there, and for a while, and I loved living there, and I loved the people that I lived with. Like, everybody was so accepting, and like, I know I can be a lot to deal with, but they seem to care about me anyway. You know, like I got kicked out for abusing my gabapentin, and when I got kicked out, I had to tell mental health court, and they put me in jail for 10 days, where I had time to think about how this happened, where in my recovery am I missing something, where am I lacking that I can, possibly turn around and fix. And then Lori came to see me, my caseworker, and she said, have you ever been to treatment, like inpatient treatment? And I'm like, no. I'm like, I would love to do that. Can I do that? Like, I mean, if there's something that I needed to do, it was that. Like, I didn't have all the tools I felt like I needed. Like, I did, but with my mental health, like, I needed a little more understanding of what was going on. And going to treatment at Casa Clare I met the most phenomenal woman there. Like, and my counselor was great. Like, I loved it. It was so empowering. Like, they helped me get through it. Like, I felt so much guilt. I felt like I flushed 9 months down the drain, and they kind of helped me like work towards, okay, well, what were you missing in your recovery? Like, whatever on your, like, when I did my steps, like that fourth step, and all my character defects, where could you have possibly have been lacking there? And then as we were figuring it out, I was learning to open up to people that, like, I didn't even know. Like, I was opening up, and I was saying, oh, this is what happened. The thing with my son, I didn't tell anybody until I went to Casa Clare. And when I finally opened up and said, this is what happened, this is what I did, it felt freeing. Like, it felt like, okay, all right, yeah, I did that, and like, it just felt like I was a little more free. I wasn't hiding. Like, I got all my secrets out, and like, I felt so much better, and I was ready to come home. And I came back from Casa Clare, and I started going back to meetings again, and I got right back into it. This time was a little bit rocky because I was really hung up on the fact that I screwed up. Like, in my head, I'm like, oh, I can't believe I did that. But like, in my head, I was still kind of like, okay, don't jump the gun, don't get too high on your horse, because you're going to get knocked off if you do that. Like, just keep in contact with God, go to your meetings, and do what you're supposed to be doing. And that's what I've been doing. And I may not be as like upbeat and like intense about the recovery thing is, but I feel intense about it. I'm still completely determined to make sure my life stays on track. If it weren't for the steps and HA and my higher power and my family and all my new friends, like, I couldn't have done it, like, and all I can say is that, like, for me, I was so stubborn about the God thing. I was so stubborn. I was like, no, I'm not going to believe in that. I'm not going to believe in that. No, you need at least to be willing to believe in God. Like, be willing to have a higher power. Because as soon as I became willing, I started to believe. And my life started to get better. And, like, I started to get better. I started to care about people. Things started to feel healthy again. Like, and I try in every way I can to stay on this track now, that I don't ever want to go back there again. And like, even if I fell down before, I got back up. I kept fighting. My higher power was not done with me. Picked me back up and said, here you go. This is you. You need to keep going. Like, you got this in you. I can feel that it's in me. Like, I feel like now that, like, I'm actually, like, it's becoming a way of life. I don't have to try so hard. Like, I do, but, like, I don't. Like, I don't have to worry so much. And, like, I feel, like, 100,000 pounds off of me, because, like, all the pills and all that stuff growing up, like, it was such a block of chaos. And like, I don't gotta live that way no more. Like, I don't have to. And I'm so glad. And I'm so glad that I was willing to talk to my higher power and get in contact with my higher power, because that alone gives me courage and strength. And I can't do it without God. I can't. Like, it doesn't matter what I do. That's a shortcut I can never take. And I don't know.